Hello, this video is for the coordinated entry point training specific to Arizona balance of state continuum of care. This video is for any user or provider who enters clients into an HMIS centralized or coordinated assessment system at a coordinated entry site where data is entered and shared in real time. This flow again applies to the balance of state continuum of care. A domestic violence victim service provider may or may not choose to use the continuum of care's coordinated entry process. Determining if the victim service provider must use a continuum of care coordinated entry process or may use a victim service provider specific process that also meets HUD's requirements. According to HUD, a coordinated entry system is a centralized or coordinated process designed to coordinate program participants' intake, assessment, and provision of referrals. A centralized or coordinated assessment system covers the geographic area, is easily accessed by individuals and families seeking housing or services, is well advertised, and includes a comprehensive and standardized assessment tool. This includes the development and maintenance of access points or entry points where individuals or families can access the coordinated entry system. Again, this training is exclusive to the coordinated entry point training and does not include referral training. Arizona Balance of State and Maricopa Continuums of Care use the HMIS Service Point by WellSky to track coordinated assessment, service needs, progress, and accomplishments of clients. We'll not go over the entry, creation, or client account search in this video. For login, adding new clients to the HMIS, and client account search, refer to the HMIS Introductory Training document. Online trainings are not a substitute for live training. Every Arizona HMIS user is encouraged to register for and attend at least one live new user training. All live new user trainings include coordinated entry point training. All coordinated entry activity begins with the EDA to the appropriate coordinated entry project. Balance of State Coalitions to End Homelessness, generally by county, will use the coordinated entry project 717 to enroll the client or household into a coordinated entry project. All clients must have a valid release of information form in their case file prior to users entering client-level data into their HMIS account to indicate either approval or denial of sharing their data. Complete the ROI tab for all adults of the household and for all children associated with the head of household. Complete the ROI for Provider Coordinated Entry Project 717. For client data security, by default, client data is locked to sharing in the balance of state continuum of care. All HMIS projects are encouraged to obtain client agreement for ROI data sharing as soon as possible after initial contact. Coordinated entry requires the use of the client ROI and ROI tab to ensure that all agencies of the coordinated entry system have access to the client data for sharing. Enter the release granted designation as yes. Enter a start date matching the current date or date that the client signed the coordinated entry release of information. The ROI date must match the entry date for the coordinated entry program. Enter an end date corresponding to 1 year, the same month, and the same day from the start date. For documentation, verbal consent is acceptable in some cases, but HMIS support recommends obtaining a signed statement from client in all cases and as soon as possible. The witness is the person that is entering the ROI into Service Point. For enrollment into the coordinated entry project, click Add Entry Exit to create the project entry for the coordinated entry project. Again, be sure to include the head of household, children, and all adults listed on the coordinated entry ROI. This video will not go over the UDE assessment. Again, for UDE assessment instruction, refer to the HMIS Introductory Training document. Note that the assessments are numbered 1, 2, and 3. After completing the UDE assessment, go on to the Coordinated Entry and Vulnerability Assessment. The date of contact should always be the same as the start date. Current living situation usually be a homeless situation. However, some coordinated entry assessments will also use institutional situations or temporary housing situations. Please be sure to ask the correct question to obtain a correct current living situation. When available, for persons that are homeless and living in a place not meant for habitation, obtain an approximate location the client may be found. HMIS support recommends using Google Maps for the most accurate latitude and longitude. In the event that the current living situation falls under any of institutional or temporary permanent housing situations, then complete the below options. These are conditional only when the current living situation falls under institutional or temporary and permanent housing situations. Coordinated entry event It's not an end date, and the date of the event is always the same as the start date. Coordinated entry event for all coordinated entry users who are not referral or housing match will be an access event. The options may be a diversion, that is, the client does not need housing, is not actually homeless at this time, and may be prevented from being actually homeless. Referral to scheduled coordinated entry crisis needs assessment, that is, the client is in a crisis at the time of assessment, and crisis takes priority over the assessment. Refer the client to a crisis needs specialist. Or referral to scheduled coordinated entry housing needs assessment. Most often, this will be the correct choice. Conditionally, only if the response needed is problem solving, diversion, rapid resolution, answer the below questions. Then could complete the coordinated entry assessment. Again, date of assessment is the date of the coordinated entry project entry, start date. An end date is not required. Assessment location is where the user is conducting the coordinated entry assessment and will correspond to your agency and project. The assessment type may be by phone, video, virtual, or in person. Assessment level depends on which assessment is necessary. Again, most often it will be a housing needs assessment. If the client requires crisis support, immediately refer the client to the crisis needs team or crisis needs specialist. Then save as crisis needs assessment. You will not need to go any further if the client is referred to crisis needs specialist. Client can return at any time for a new coordinated entry assessment. Prioritization status will be placed on prioritization list in most cases. Again, if the crisis needs assessment, the client is not placed on the prioritization list at this time. PI SPDAT, TASE SPDAT, or VIF SPDAT are trained only by your local coalitions of homelessness. HMIS support does not train on the VI SPDATs. After completing the SPDAT, click Save and move on to number 3, the Balance of State Coordinated Entry Custom Assessment. Record the interview date, which again should match the start date for the project. Interviewer name will be you, the user that's conducting the interview. Interviewer agency again will correspond to the location that the interview is completed and will vary by agency and or project. And of course, interview county. Client may say that although being referred in one county, they would prefer to be in another county if residence is available. Answer the sub-question, does the client have ties to the preferred county? Pregnancy status is an important question. Do not skip pregnancy status. SMI determination is not a required question, but is encouraged. And you'll notice the last part, the coordinated assessment client contact information, is the same as that seen in assessment 2, the coordinated entry and vulnerability assessment. If you've completed the coordinated assessment client contact information in the coordinated entry and vulnerability assessment, you do not need to complete it again here. Click Save and exit. You've completed the entry for the coordinated entry project 717. It is the general workflow for coordinated entry that the client is exited on the same day after the coordinated entry project entry is created. You will then exit the client and all members of the household, adults and children, on the same day. Destination is the appropriate destination for where the client will be going after completing the assessment. You can add any other notes as appropriate. Click Save, and you have completed the coordinated entry and vulnerability assessment. Balance of State coordinated entry and custom assessment, and the coordinated entry exit. There are 4 distinct elements of a coordinated entry assessment and referral process: assessment, scoring, prioritization, and eligibility. You may need to continue with training and workflow for housing prioritization and referral. That completes this coordinated entry point training for Arizona Balance of State Continuum of Care.